Washington Governor Jay Inslee dropped out of the presidential race and is instead looking to keep his position as governor.
So what now? We look into his future plans and his chances of being reelected.
Plus, all eyes are on the massive wildfires burning in the Amazon rainforest. Fires burning in one of the wettest places on Earth seems unusual, but is it really? We look into it.
And talk about a cold front. 15 degrees is a big drop, especially overnight. Things could be looking up for the weekend, though.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Hanrahan.
Good to have you with us. I'm Jane McCarthy. Governor Jay Inslee is changing course. Today, Inslee announced he's running for a third term as governor, hours after he dropped out of the 2020 presidential race.
Now that he's shifted, we wanted to look into what his campaign might look like. KREM 2 Shayna Waldtower joins us now with a look into the biggest campaign questions right now. Shayna?
Yeah, thanks, Mark and Jane. Since Governor Inslee is essentially switching races, a few questions have popped up around his new campaign and how that could affect his chances of being reelected as governor. One of those questions being if he can use donations from his presidential run for his governor campaign. We reached out to the Federal Election Commission. They said the rules vary from state to state and depend on if it's allowed in the campaign finance laws. For Washington, this is legal. The State Public Disclosure Commission says Inslee just has to get permission from the original donors before he can transfer the money. So none lost there. Second question, with the national attention from his presidential run, how does this affect his chances for re-election? Well, let's take a look at his approval ratings over the past year. According to the approval poll website, Morning Consult, there doesn't seem to be much change. The ratings are pulled every quarter. In the last quarter of 2018, before Inslee announced his run for presidency, his approval rating was at 44%. In March of this year, after he announced, it inched up to 47%, and it's stayed there ever since. If Inslee is reelected, he will be just the second person to serve a third term as Washington governor. The first was Daniel Jackson Evans in 1965. Now, to find out more on Inslee's campaign and his next steps, you can find a detailed article on our website at KREM.com. In studio, I'm Shayna Waldtower, KREM 2 News.
Shayna, thank you very much. And here is a look at the Democrats who have qualified for the upcoming debate in September. Julian Castro was the latest candidate to make the cut. Latest polling showed Tulsi Gabbard and Tom Steyer are close to reaching the 2% requirement.
Any other candidates running have until the 28th to qualify for the debate. So if any additional candidates qualify, the debate would be split into 2 nights.
President Donald Trump is clarifying his stance on gun control legislation, and this dialogue comes after a group of students who survived last year's Parkland shooting released a new plan to combat gun violence.
Part of that plan calls on the president to declare a national emergency.
We're working on background checks. There are things we can do, but we already have very serious background checks. We have strong background checks.
The president spoke with the chief of the NRA earlier this week. He says the two talked about gun control concepts, but nothing is set in stone.
Parkland students also want a reinstatement of the assault weapons ban and a national gun registry. Congress is expected to hold hearings on gun violence next month.
I'm sorry, you need more training if you can't figure out that's bad. More training. Disgusting.
Well, people are asking us today if that confrontation you just saw had to happen. Those were family members of David Novak. He was killed by an officer after a run-in with police.
His family voiced anger and frustration to the Spokane County prosecutor in a news conference announcing the shooting was justified. Novak's family was furious because they were not told of the prosecutor's decision before the news conference. They said they didn't even know a news conference was happening.
The only thing we got was about 20 minutes before we got in the car to get here, a body cam of my son being shot.
That you were on
That
scene
is
11 seconds.
So disrespectful.
11 seconds.
Shame on you.
11 seconds.
Shame on you.
So that prompted us to ask who is responsible for notifying families in situations like this. Spokane Police Sergeant Terry Pruniger told KREM 2 News the department believes it should be the responsibility of the agency releasing information, and in this case that would mean the prosecutor's office. Yesterday, the prosecutor blamed an error in his office for that family not receiving that news.
We reached out to Police Chief Craig Meidel and the county prosecutor for additional comment. They were both out of town today, so we'll continue tracking down answers about how this will work in the future.
In other news, all eyes on the Amazon. Massive wildfires are burning up huge chunks of the rainforest in Brazil. People around the world are watching with a heavy heart as more and more forest just goes up in flames.
Thomas Patrick looking into this global story from a weather and climate perspective. Thomas?
Yeah, Mark and Jane, rainforest, wildfires. It seems contradictory at first. These fires in Brazil are starting to get international attention now that we are understanding the scope of what's happening. Here's some NASA satellite images from last week, and it's easy to pick out the dozens of active fires and the widespread smoke, the hazy and milky white picture that is blanketing a large portion of the country. I think we can all relate, living in the inland Northwest, to having smoky skies and poor or unhealthy air quality as a direct result of wildfires. On Monday, that was so bad that in Sao Paulo, Brazil, they were just in the dark in the middle of the day due to all the thick smoke and wildfire activity in the area, as you see right there. But just how unusual is it to see wildfires in this part of the world? Well, while this is the rainforest, there are still wet and dry seasons. And this is the dry season just getting started. It goes from July to November, and area wildfires tend to peak around early September. But what's making this year shocking is just how many wildfires there are already. The Brazilian Institute for Space Research has determined there has been about 75,000 fires, and by far the most since the agency began tracking this information since 2013, and it's nearly double the total number of fires from all of last year. So why should we be concerned a hemisphere away in Washington and Idaho? Well, the Amazon is a huge part of the global ecosystem, as the trees and forests produce about 20% of Earth's entire oxygen supply. And without it, the planet's climate issues we're facing right now will only amplify as a result. Mark, Jane?
All right, Thomas, thank you very much. Well, the Idaho company that created the shoes that grow is expanding their product line to protect children from malaria.
About half the world is at risk of malaria, so many people sleep under a mosquito net. The traditional net, though, it hangs from the ceiling.
If someone sleeps outside on the streets, they're on the move, and they don't sleep under a ceiling, they can't really use a traditional bed net.
So with that in mind, the nonprofit created this. It is called a Bed Net Buddy. The collapsible net is also coated with insecticide. It's an extra layer of protection against mosquitoes.
The Bed Net Buddy is still in the trial phase, but the nonprofit hopes to distribute the product coming up soon.
Wow.
Good idea. New data tonight about the amount of radio frequency radiation from your cell phone. The Chicago Tribune newspaper spent about a year investigating the effects.
They went into a lab that creates specially formulated liquid that actually simulates human tissue. Investigative reporters stuck iPhone 7s to this tissue, and the radiation measurement inside the tissue was double what Apple reports to the government, and well above the legal limit.
So Apple disputes this and says it tests its products differently, and they do, but those tests were created by the FCC back in the 1990s when cell phones were often worn on our hips. A big difference compared to now when we put our phones in our pockets or hold them, of course, right up to our ear.
So what does it mean? Well, scientists still not sure because there's not a lot of data surrounding the effects of radiation.
Some reports link it to cancer, while others say it's harmless. All right, turning our attention to our local forecast here. We are experiencing cool weather today, but things looking up for the weekend.
Tom Sherry out on the patio now, cooking up something good for his barbecue forecast. Hi, Tom.
It's a little bit nutty, a little bit kooky, but I like it as we're heading into, the end of August, so to speak. The end of our summer. Labor Day is a week away from this coming weekend. Look at this. We actually have meatballs on the grill. And I told you during the 5 o'clock broadcast, these are a combination of some great beef, homegrown local beef, as well as some sausage mixed together, all kinds of seasonings, including some Parmesan cheese, some breadcrumbs, all of that. And then I've put it on here. My biggest challenge, of course, and you probably saw this coming, is keeping the meatballs together so they don't dry out and kind of crumble. So far, so good. I was able to turn them once. I also coated them with some olive oil, and then I put some added seasoning, salt and pepper over the top of these. And then I'm heating up some pasta sauce right here, or marinara sauce. And so we're going to make meatball sandwiches. We'll throw these in the hoagie buns, and we'll throw on a little Parmesan cheese and then some of that marinara sauce. Should be good. Let's do this, folks. Let's talk about the weather, shall we? Had that beautiful cool down, that wonderful weather that rain that we got after about 9 o'clock last night. 76 comfortable degrees right now here in the inland northwest. The wind is out of the south-southwest at 5. All the rain is over in western Montana. As you can see, we've got clear skies, no rain across Washington State, Oregon, as well as into most of Idaho, certainly northern Idaho. So we talk about what we've got going on as far as your day planner forecast. Look for mostly clear skies with an overnight low of 57. Tomorrow will be great. Friday we'll start out with sunshine, increasing clouds late in the afternoon, but we should still warm it up to 83 degrees. And for the weekend now, it's looking good as well. I've got temperatures this weekend in the low 80s. I've got sunshine on Sunday and partly cloudy skies on Saturday. I'll tell you the best day to get out in your backyard and do some grilling with my barbecue forecast, as well as a look at the 10-day outlook, all coming up.
Looking forward to that, Tom. Thanks so much. Well, people living in Spokane's Browns Edition, they successfully passed a landmark measure. It's to designate the neighborhood as an historic district. The area will become the first designated historic area in all of Spokane.
That's pretty cool right there. Well, the time has arrived. Preseason NFL football airs on KREM 2 coming up tomorrow night. So here's a look at the schedule. Tomorrow at 5 p.m., the Buffalo Bills will take on the Detroit Lions.
That means you won't see KREM 2 news at 5 or 6 o'clock, but you'll still see us here at 4 o'clock. And we will be on for a special post-game show around 8 to get you caught up on the day's news and weather.